Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. We are super excited to share with you some of our thoughts, some sort of behind the scenes on some of the Sharkfest shows that we were all on this year in Sharkfest. So, for those of you joining us, if you're joining us on YouTube or Facebook, feel free to put some comments in the chat. If you have any questions for us, anything that you want to say, at the end of today's broadcast, we will have some time for questions. So, any questions that you have about sharks, about myths, about us, about our shows, feel free to drop those into the comments and we will get to those at the end of the live stream. So, hi everyone. My name is Jasmine Graham. I am the president and CEO of MISS, Minorities in Shark Sciences. And I was in the show Jaws Invasion this year. And I'm joined by Carly, and I'll give her a chance to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carly Jackson. I'm going to be your host for tonight, and I am the Director of Communications and a co-founder for Minorities in Shark Sciences. And I'm really excited to get started, and we're going to first start off by introducing our panelists. We're going to let them come on up and introduce themselves. So we're going to start with Abel. So Abel, if you can come up and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Abel. My pronouns are they, them. I was in Sharks That Eat Everything. Let's see. I am a recent master's graduate from the University of San Diego. I studied two types of flat shark, the shovel-nosed guitarfish and the California bat ray. And I was looking at their migration patterns to and from a known aggregation or grouping site in San Diego.
Awesome. Thank you, Abel. So our next panelist, we're going to introduce Jada.
Hello, hello. How is everyone doing? I hope you're doing well. My name is Jada Elcock. I am also one of the co-founders and the director of public relations for MISS. I was in the show Planet Shark episode 2, to be specific. And my PhD research, I'm currently at the MIT Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution Joint Program for Biological Oceanography, and I'm interested in shark movement ecology and habitat use, behavioral ecology, all that fun stuff of migratory sharks. Right now, I'm really interested in basking sharks. We know that they migrate super far, sometimes from Cape Cod down past the equator and back. We don't know why they're doing it. We don't know what they're doing when they disappear into the mesopelagic. We know what's going on, and I'm really interested to see if we can figure that out. So that's me. Wonderful to virtually meet you all.
Thank you, Jada. All right, so the next panelist introducing themselves is April. April, come on up.
Hey, everyone. Thank you. I'm April, and I am in Southern California. I'm a shark researcher. I was on Sharks That Eat Everything. Current research is getting a lot more into the media psychology and cultural implications of communications around sharks, and especially in the surfing communities around the world. I've been a surfer forever, so I do anything I can to get paid to surf.
Awesome. Thank you. And our last panelist we have on tonight is Sora. Hello, Sora.
Hi. My name is Sora Kim, and I use she, her pronouns. I am at UC Merced. I'm a professor. My specialty is stable isotope analysis. I look at modern and paleo ecology and sort of how environmental change is impacting sharks.
Awesome. Thank you, Sora. So we do have another MISS member who was not able to make it today, Candace Fields. She was in a Sharkfest show as well. So Candace is a MISS member, and she is a PhD student at Florida International University. She was featured on the show World's Biggest Hammerhead, which features a team of shark scientists from Florida International University who are on an expedition to try and find the world's biggest great hammerhead. And we're going to watch a couple clips from her show now.
BRUV, or a baited remote underwater video station, is a really great tool for us. All right, let's do it. Okay. We'll be able to put down a couple of BRUV units and see, yes, this is indeed a hotspot for hammerheads. Hold on. Her face is wrapped in the mono. Yeah.
Just have to spin her, pull it towards you.
When you're controlling all the weight of that shark, it's putting its full force against you. It takes almost everything you have in you to fight that animal. You really have to be physically ready to take on that battle. You know, in reality, you should probably lose because you're sometimes fighting over 1,000 pounds of weight.
Awesome. So yes, Candace was in World's Biggest Hammerhead, and that show is streaming on Disney Plus, on the National Geographic channel in Disney Plus, and on National Geographic apps as well. So I'm excited to talk to our panelists tonight, and we're going to talk about some of the shows that they were in. And the first show we're going to talk about is Sharks That Eat Everything. So, Sharks That Eat Everything dive into the jaw-dropping stories of anyone and anything that's found themselves prey to the deadliest, toothiest terrors of the sea. The boundless hunger and curiosity of sharks can lead them to chow down on the most unexpected things, such as big game like hippos and crocs, or inanimate objects like kayaks, cages, and chicken coops. Weird. This show features Abel and April, and let's watch a quick clip from the show.
Mossel Bay, South Africa. The waters off this harbor town are teeming with sea life. That's why these German tourists are on the lookout for captivating sea creatures, like these Cape fur seals. Weighing up to 800 pounds each, these marine mammals are the ideal meal for the largest predatory fish on Earth, the great white.
For sharks, the key ingredient is fat. They use this fat to travel great distances or maintain their optimal body temperature. And recent studies indicate that great white sharks most likely eat a seal every 3 days.
Wow, that looked like really cool show. So I want you all to tell me about your experience on the show, some of the big takeaways from the big takeaways for the audience, and let's start with Abel.
Yeah, so this was my first sort of media appearance where I was working with a film crew. I've had some experience in theater before, like I did community theater before I went off to college as a child. So I wasn't really sure what to expect, but you know, all of the filming happened in LA, and I'm living in San Diego right now, so I was able to drive up to LA, and it was a really cool experience. All the cameras were up in your face, all the equipment was up in your face, and the director was kind of prompting us to kind of deliver what we were saying in a certain way, in a way that sounded exciting or a little bit scary. And so being able to kind of use that side of myself, like the theater side of myself, where I was trying to remember everything, but also trying to deliver lines or things that I was saying in a way that was what they wanted, was so cool and so interesting. So I didn't know that being a scientist also encompassed being an actor, going to LA to do a shoot, you know. I felt very, very professional.
That's awesome. Didn't think you'd be using your theater skills for a shark show.
Not at all.
That's so cool. So April, how about you?
This was fun. It's not my first shoot, and I am in the LA area. So it was really interesting. I'd worked with this crew before, and so it was all inside. It was at a great location. And what Abel said about they had a specific way, and usually that's what happens when someone comes to you with the show. They have a specific way they want the scientists and researchers to be and talk and act and etc. Not necessarily act. But interestingly, and so like I said, it's not my first one. I've done live news, I've done Nat Geo, and I've done other Sharkfests and weeks before. And so it was nice because you're kind of dry and happy in the studio. It's nice and easy. There's, water and apple juice and some food if you need it. Whereas when you're out in the field filming, you're like, it's a whole different thing. You're either, for me, I'm on my surfboard or in a boat or I'm diving. So it's very physical. So it was nice to be, kind of cushy and comfortable. But it's interesting. A lot of scientists I come across several scientists that do a lot of speaking. There's always an expert. So if you think about it, when you go to an expert on the news, especially around summertime in Southern California, they tap local scientists and researchers to talk about sharks every time there's, one spotted, etc. And so they go from different angles. And I always come from the surfing angle. So surfers and sharks have quite the relationship. So it's always fun to talk about things they eat because in my experience, it hasn't been this surfer.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I think it was a really unique experience because, like you said, April, we weren't out in the field. We were just kind of sitting there and talking because they had already collected the footage. And so they wanted us to comment on the footage that was being provided or that had already been shot, which is a lot, I think, different from being on a boat while trying to look good on camera at the same time, I can only imagine how that must be for you.
That's the thing that a lot of people don't realize when you see these shows on Sharkfest, say it's a half hour or an hour long show. Sometimes those shots take weeks of sitting on the boat, if not months to get.
Yeah, that's so true. And Abel, I know this was your first time seeing yourself on TV, right? So how was that? How did that feel?
It was really cool. I actually had a red carpet premiere at my house with all of my friends. I was like, oh, whatever. I'm just going to go all out and just do this because it's a really cool opportunity to have once in a lifetime. Well, maybe not once for me, but like for your average person. So honestly, all my friends were shouting, so I couldn't even hear myself. So I'm gonna have to watch it back again. But it was a really cool experience. I love doing media stuff like this, so I'm hoping that there will be more opportunities for me. But I will say that a lot of the footage that was shown was a little bit gory. So if you're not really into blood or things being ripped apart, maybe refrain from watching it or close your eyes when we're not on screen.
Yes, with the show title, with the sharks that eat everything, you will see sharks eating a lot of things. So, but thank you, Abel and April. We're going to hear more from them in just a second. But let's talk about Planet Shark next. That is a 3-episode series, also part of Sharkfest. So sharks are one of the oldest and most successful hunters to have ever lived. With more than 500 species, sharks dominate every corner of the ocean. What is it about these extraordinary animals that make them so successful? For the first time, scientists are unlocking the secrets of sharks, featuring newly discovered species, locations, and behavior. Planet Shark combines stunning 4K archive footage with original content from the world's leading shark scientists to take a timely and in-depth look at the greatest predator on Earth. Miss Director of Public Relations, Jada Elcock, was featured on this show. Let's take a sneak peek at a clip from the show.
They were seeing this weird band of something in the deep ocean, and they weren't sure what it was. They were thinking maybe this was just a shallow portion of the ocean and this is the bottom. But they discovered that that weird band was moving throughout different parts of the day. And the more we looked at this weird band and tried to figure out what it was, we found out that it was actually millions upon millions of organisms in the deep ocean. Sea jellies, zooplankton, crustaceans, small fish, even cephalopods like squids. There has to be a reason that you're putting yourself into these situations, and the evidence is pointing towards food.
It's called the deep scattering layer. Every night, these Twilight Zone creatures migrate to the surface, and every morning they return to the cold waters of the deep. The Woods Hole tagging data shows the pelagic sharks shadow their every move. Like clockwork, they swim down to feed each day. But how do they overcome the extreme cold of the deep?
Sharks are diving to hundreds of meters below the surface of the ocean, and sometimes they're using warm water or warm core eddies to access these depths. These eddies are pulling warm water deeper into the ocean, and the sharks can use that as a tunnel to forage for longer at deeper depths without getting dangerously cold.
Wow, that just looks like such an interesting show. So Jada, can you tell us about Planet Shark and what should our audience be learning from this show?
Absolutely. So just like Abel, this was also my first appearance on TV, which was like a dream come true. It was the coolest thing ever. My advisor was not in town, so I literally just filmed it in his office. They had a crew come out to us, and my advisor was like, yeah, just use my office. There's like a screen in there you guys can use. It was great. And the production company was absolutely fantastic. They were very science forward, making sure that everything was very accurate, like kind of like Abel was talking about, like wanting you to say it in a way that sounds like exciting, but still very much, scientifically accurate. They want to make sure that everything is 100% real, and it's not just like for show. But it was such a cool experience to be able to do that. I got to answer a whole bunch of questions about sharks in the ocean Twilight Zone. And yeah, I mean, these sharks are disappearing into the ocean Twilight Zone in depths that we could never imagine for reasons that we're not 110% sure about. But the evidence, like I said in the video, is that it's pointing towards food. It's likely that they're going down there to feed, because there's this huge mass of prey items that are just sitting there waiting to be eaten, essentially, in the eyes of a shark at least, just sitting there hundreds of meters below the surface of the ocean. And I mean, if you're a predator and you're out there in the pelagic where it seems like there's not really much out there, the mesopelagic is going to be where you're going to find the most food. So they're diving down there, and different sharks have like different dive profiles, different diving patterns and everything like that, basically with different ways of being able to access those depths while still staying, overcoming those physiological constraints of, depth and temperature and pressure and everything else that's going on. But I guess my biggest takeaway is that sharks are kind of this link. We like to think of them as this link between the surface ocean and the deep ocean in the middle of the ocean. And I think that that's something really cool, because you can kind of use sharks then as a way of studying the ocean Twilight Zone from the perspective of a predator. And I think that that's something very valuable that we haven't really thought of in the past. But now that we know that they're diving down there, this is the chance for us to kind of look at their behaviors down there and see exactly what's going on, and glean more information about the ocean Twilight Zone in the process of doing that. So yeah.
So cool. So using sharks as a proxy, pretty much, for our ocean.
Yeah, I mean, using them as our new technology, I guess.
Yeah. That's so cool. Well, thank you, Jada. We'll be hearing more from Jada in a little bit as well. So let's move on to talk about Shark Attack Files, which is a show I was featured in for the second year in a row. So I was in season 1 last year, and I was also in season 2 this year. And also Dr. Sora Kim made an appearance in episode 1. And I believe we have some clips from this show as well.
If there's other people doing risky behavior with sharks, like taking these selfies, even touching sharks, other people will think that's okay, and they'll want to do it themselves. When you do this, you're putting yourself at risk.
It appears Anna may have pushed her safety too far.
You know, there's a lot of evidence out there that shows that people are taking more risks just to get the perfect selfie with wild animals. There's definitely some people willing to put their lives at risk for social media. They're just doing it for the gram.
The risks involved with doing it for the gram aren't just limited to sharks. Selfies on the edge of a cliff or with wild moose garner hundreds of thousands of likes. But sometimes these clicks come at a deadly price.
Some people die trying to get these selfies, and it's all for social media.
From January to October 2021, 31 people died in selfie-related accidents across the globe.
Most likely, this social media influencer was just thinking about the likes and trying to go viral, but unfortunately, this resulted in a bite from this wild animal.
Anna's experience may be part of yet another alarming trend. Bites from nurse sharks are on the rise, right alongside their popularity in social media posts.
Nurse sharks are probably one of the most famous sharks to see on social media. If you look up the hashtag nurse sharks, there are millions of pictures of people posing with nurse sharks.
Carly doesn't think the nurse shark photo trend will dry up anytime soon. And this could mean more bites from these laid-back sharks, simply thanks to human behavior.
Yeah, that was really fun to shoot, honestly, and to talk about watching people do kind of really silly things and then get bit by sharks and be like, oh, why did I get bit? But yeah, so Shark Attack Files is it's a show that uses cutting edge technology to investigate new theories about the world's most dramatic shark attacks. So, like, why are sharks drawn to shipwrecks? Are sharks entering urban environments? And are pregnant sharks more likely to kill? Can humans outsmart sharks? And why do sharks prefer attack men? Those are some of the questions that they ask in the show. But yeah, so in this show, I talked about the nurse shark segment. So my research is with nurse sharks, and my favorite animals are nurse sharks. So usually when people need someone to talk about a nurse shark, they'll call me. So I talked about this nurse shark attack, and I say attack because to get bit by a nurse shark, it is your own fault. You usually have to be you have to provoke the nurse shark, and then it'll bite you. Other than that, it's just going to leave you alone. That's actually true with pretty much all sharks. But yeah, so it was a tourist that got bit by a nurse shark. It was nurse sharks that were in a tourist area, so they were getting fed all the time, and they basically we were talking about in the show how social media has an influence on people's behavior, and how nurse sharks are one of those popular shark species that you can find on social media because they're pretty abundant in the Caribbean and in tropical areas, and they're also pretty they're real chill sharks. They're pretty easily to get tourism around because they have the reputation of being like the puppy dogs of the sea, and they don't really have that like sharky shark look. Like, they don't look like a great white shark, so people aren't like, oh my gosh, it's scary looking. They're pretty cute, honestly. But yeah, and the more people are seeing like these other people on social media interacting with these sharks, the more they're like, ooh, like that's cool, I want to swim with sharks too. And that's why in the show they had said that the number of bites from nurse sharks is on the rise, because a lot of social media influence is on the rise, and you're seeing more and more people, just like in those videos, just swimming around with nurse sharks, taking selfies. And these sharks, if they get used to humans being around, they are used to humans having food around, then if you don't have food, they're going to investigate. It's usually an investigative bite. So they're taking a bite to be like, ooh, do you have food? And they'll let go once they realize you don't have food. But nurse sharks are probably one of the worst sharks to get bit by because they kind of suction on and it's hard to get them off. But yeah, it was really cool to talk about all of that on the show. And Dr. Sora Kim, can you please tell us about your thoughts about the show and what you talked about as well? Because we didn't have any clips from your part of the show, but yeah, just tell us about what you talked about and your experience on the show and all of that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it was like really hard for me to watch those clips because I used to work in Yosemite National Park, and I've lived in Wyoming and seen people do those ridiculous things for selfies even like a long time ago, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I know what this is gonna happen. Yeah, so I was in episode 1 with cookie cutter sharks. The premise of it was that there was I think it's the Molokini Passage. It's an area where long distance ocean swimmers, it's like one of the big swims for them to do. And there was this period of time, or this 1 year, that there were, I think, 3 different shark attacks from cookie cutter sharks. And so they figured out that that was from cookie cutters based on the roundness and the type of bite. And so this is my first time on TV. I have done a lot of podcasts and like radio interviews and even written pieces for the conversationists and stuff, but I've never been on TV. I don't have any kind of theater background like Abel. And so I was pretty worried about it. I flew out to LA where they did the shoot at, I think it was this, it's a little aquarium just below the Santa Monica Pier. So it was a cool location. It was a great little aquarium. And then it was great working with the team as well. They were trying, it was almost like an investigation of trying to figure out like what was going on and trying to solve this mystery. And so it was almost like that they were asking me questions, but I don't think necessarily they knew what was causing these bites either. And I mean, I gave some possibilities that it might be this diurnal migration, sort of like what Jada was talking about, but in the opposite direction, that that the cookie cutter sharks were coming to the surface at night in order to follow their prey. But when I watched the whole show together, it was interesting because it was like they cracked the mystery at the end, and I don't think that they necessarily had it all figured out when they were filming with me based on the questions that they were asking me along the way. And so it was nice too because I did not go out in the field and catch these cookie cutter sharks. That was with the Monterey Bay Aquarium. And so they actually had the university film me in the lab doing some like chemistry and then explaining to students what we do and things like that. So some of the students got to make it on to the episode as well, which they were pretty stoked about. But it was a great experience, and I really commend Nat Geo for really going after the science and featuring, scientists, and even the director. It was clear that he had read the scientific paper, which was like no small task, as we all know. So yeah, it was a great experience.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Sora. So last but certainly not least, we have Jaws Invasion, which features myself and Jasmine, Miss President. And Jaws Invasion, the episode, so this series is about big and dangerous predators that are invading unexpected waters, from golf courses and swimming pools to lakes and backyard keys. Through analyzing user-generated footage, shark experts get to the bottom of how and why sharks seem more willing than ever to meet us on our own turf. In a bizarre twist, people encountering sharks in unexpected places are called to urgent action. So let's watch a couple clips from this show.
Almost every year, the Gulf Course is devastated by floods. Nearby riverbanks can't contain the water, so the sharks have an open path.
Whenever there's weather events, sharks usually can sense the change in barometric pressure, so they know whenever big storms are coming. So usually they're going to move into areas where they're at less risk, which is probably how these bull sharks ended up in the pond in the first place, trying to get out of the path of the storm.
When the floodwaters recede, some bull sharks have nowhere to go and wind up stranded in suburbia. But the sharks on the golf course found a lake deep enough to keep swimming. What storms bring in, they can also take away. A more recent flood may have thinned the shark numbers at the 14th hole. Around the world, great whites are known as open ocean travelers. They feed in deep water and breach from below. But somehow, this 14-foot giant gets into a pond used for leisure. And perhaps, strangest of all, it won't leave.
Big sharks get trapped for a lot of reasons. It could be that the tide was high enough at the time for them to swim into the area, and maybe they were chasing prey, and then the tide goes down and the water level drops, and then suddenly this animal doesn't have enough water to get through the area that it came through initially.
It settles in for the day, then the week, then 2 weeks. Residents call in experts to get it out, but everyone is stumped.
You can't control a 14-foot great white shark.
The scientists tag her so they can track her movements beyond the pond. They find a possible exit point and lay nets to guide her out. But she refuses to go.
A shark that big can do whatever it wants to.
Yeah, so Jasmine, can you tell us about some of the crazy places talked about on Jaws Invasion and how it was filming?
Yeah, so it was pretty cool. It was very similar to like the show Ridiculousness, I guess, where
my gosh,
they
yes.
show clips and then the commentators comment. But it was really cool because some of the videos were videos that people had shared with me before, because as all of our panelists probably know, whenever you are a shark scientist, anything that involves sharks that appears anywhere in the world, people are like, Jasmine, explain this to me. So it kind of felt like that, where my mom had found this YouTube video and was like, Jasmine, why? So I had a really fun time talking about this stuff. We had like bull sharks taking on hippos and crocs in the
That was
Nile
the
River.
craziest one.
We had like, sharks in golf courses, sharks in people's saltwater swimming pools, like all of this stuff, which is really funny. And I think that it's hilarious because people are kind of like, oh my goodness, how did this shark get here? But we go into the ocean all the time, and like I'm sure sharks are also like, why are you here? You don't belong here. So it's funny that we're like, well, you can't be here. Like, how are you going to tell them where they could go? They do what they want. Like I said, like if you're a big shark, you do whatever you want to do. You leave whenever you feel like leaving. So I especially love that clip of like Greg Scoble trying to get this shark out of this area, and it's like, no, I don't want to go there, and you just let it do what it's doing, because like the sharks are going there for a reason. And like I explained in another part of the show, sometimes sharks go into shallow areas because they're hunting or they're trying to avoid a storm or things like that. But also sometimes they're going into those areas because they're injured or sick or something like that. And they're trying to get into shallow water so they don't have to deal with other predators or other things that might hurt them. People don't often think about this, but Sharks get eaten by other sharks and other things. And so if you're weak or sick, you're going to want to go where there's not a lot of other sharks or predators that might hurt you. So sometimes they'll go into shallow water to heal and rest up. And Carly and I were just in California, and we did a necropsy on a salmon shark that came in and washed in, and it ended up having like meningitis. So, one of those things of like, shark is sick. What do? I guess I'm going to go over here and try and heal, and then maybe you don't heal and you get washed in. There was also, I remember a video of like some people trying to get the shark that was like washed into the beach, like back into the water. And we talked about that while we were doing the necropsy as well. Like sometimes people want to try and save sharks that have washed up on the beach, but if they've washed up on the beach, they're probably sick. So even if you get them back into the water, they're probably just going to die. So a lot of times when you do see these animals doing these, especially if they're in like super duper shallow water, something is probably up. And they're there for some specific reason. So it was really cool to get to talk about all of that, because people don't think about sharks being in trouble or being sick or like having to avoid certain things. So it's like they're invading our space. No, they're just trying to get away from something that might hurt them, just like we would do. So I found that to be a really cool aspect that I got to talk about on the show.
Yeah, I think it was really cool to me, like talking about some of the different adaptations that the sharks had to even keep going in some of the weird places that they ended up. And also some of those videos were just crazy. Like the bull sharks and the hippos, when I first saw it, I was just like, what? Like, why are these two animals in the same thing, in the same area? But yeah, it was cool filming that show, and it did remind me of being on like a sit down, what is it, like a talk show or something, where they just put up videos of things like ridiculousness and you talk about videos. So but yeah, so everyone tuning in, please be sure to put your questions for our panelists in the comments if you're watching from Facebook and YouTube. And we're going to try and answer as many as we can. But in the meantime, we're going to bring everyone back on, and we're going to start answering these questions. So just to start us off, warm-up question. I'm sure everyone is dying to know, but can everyone tell me what their favorite shark is and also why? And Sora, we're going to start with you.
Okay. I have two favorite sharks. My first favorite shark is a leopard shark because I've spent a lot of time with them. I did an experiment with them that lasted almost 4 years, and I'm revisiting them with some current science. And then the other favorite shark is a sand tiger shark because they've been around forever, and 50 million years ago, they existed all the way from the Arctic to the Antarctic.
Whoa. April, let's go with you next.
It's hard for me to pick a favorite, but I do have some individuals that I love, like the one in my background. This is Bryn. She's in Guadalupe Island. You can see her. She's about 18-foot great white. There's nothing like how gorgeous and graceful great white sharks are with their beautiful blue eyes.
And Jada, what is your favorite shark?
My favorite shark is this. Oh, it's mirrored. It's fine. This guy right here, the thresher shark. I am obsessed with them. This shark is my favorite because of a few different reasons. One, look at its face. He looks terrified for no reason. Like, why is he so scared? He looks like he just was asked by his friend to go ask for ketchup at McDonald's, and he like can't do it. It's hilarious. I love it. So scared. And the other reason is because they are a shark that hunts with its butt, and that's really cool. Most sharks are spending all their energy like swimming as fast as they can after their prey, and this shark is like, you know what if I just use my tail that is as long as the rest of my body, and I like scorpion whip my prey? That's the coolest thing ever. Like, come on, guys. That's awesome. And I've never seen it happen in person. I've only seen one thresher shark in person. That tail, it was during some field work, and my postdoc almost got whipped in the face with it, which would have been really bad. But that didn't happen, which is now why it's funny, because no one actually got hurt. And I just think they're really cool sharks. They're scared, but they have the coolest behind you ever did see. So they go. Thresher shark, best shark.
Oh my gosh, yes, they are cool. Abel, favorite shark?
Yeah, first of all, Jada, it's so funny about asking for ketchup at McDonald's. It's just even funnier that it's a self-serve thing. You don't have to ask anyone. So just like the concept of a thresher shark asking for ketchup at McDonald's is hilarious.
He's just too scared. He doesn't want to get up and draw attention to himself.
But my favorite shark, like Dr. Sork, is the leopard shark. It was the first shark that I got to study here in San Diego. There's tons of them. They come every summer. I will be snorkeling with them for the first time this year, hopefully. But yeah, absolutely adore the leopard sharks. They are so cute.
Love it. And Jasmine?
Well, first of all, Abel, how have you not snorkeled with leopard sharks yet? Like, I've been to San Diego 2 times, and both times snorkeled with leopard sharks. You live there. What are you doing? What
I know. I should have just come with you this year. I should have just skipped work. Boss, if you're watching this, I didn't say that.
Next year, whenever I'm in San Diego, we must do some leopard shark snorkeling. But my favorite animal, surprising no one who's ever met me or had any sort of conversation with me, is the bonnethead shark, because they're amazing. They're adorable. They've got like little heads that look like they're wearing hats. They've got little faces. They're like constantly confused. They don't ever know where they're going. We always have to walk bonnet heads to the back of the boat to release them, to get them as far away from our gear as possible. Otherwise, they will swim directly back into it, because they'll be like, that worked well the first time. Why don't I try it again? So I love them. Also, like when you're in the water with them, they will like literally run into you. Like they'll like, oh, what was that? Let me try again. Oh, no, it's still there. And you're like, dude, just go around. I'm standing right here. So I love them. They're also omnivorous. And so they were the first discovered shark to be omnivorous. They were previously the only known omnivorous, but now we've had another paper come out that says whale sharks are also eating some algae, some plants. So that's fun. So they're not the only known omnivorous shark, but they were the first and the bestest. So that's why I love bonnetheads.
They are adorable. And my favorite shark is the nurse shark, as we learned earlier. If anyone needs any shark scientists to talk about a nurse shark, they call me usually. So, but yes. So the first question for our panelists. So how did you start getting into shark research? Oh, sorry, I clicked on the wrong question. There you go. How did you start getting into shark research, especially being able to be on TV? And we'll start with Jasmine.
So I got into shark research because I went to college at College of Charleston, and I met a scientist there named Dr. Gavin Naylor, who studied sharks. And he's just very easily excitable when it comes to sharks. So I met him, and he was like, da 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 da, sharks, science, phylogeny, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, well, this man is super excited about this. So I wanted to work with him because of all of the professors that I talked to, he was the one that was like most excited about what he was doing. So I was like, obviously, I'm going to go work with that guy because I want to work with someone who loves their job. So I went and worked with him, and then I quickly fell in love with sharks. I had never really thought about sharks. I wasn't a person that was like obsessed with sharks from a young age. I also wasn't a person that was afraid of sharks. They were just like animals that existed. Was indifferent towards them in the same way that I feel about, I don't know, crickets, just like they exist. So I like really fell in love with them. I don't know why I said crickets, whatever. I really fell in love with them. And I did a bunch of other things while I was in undergrad and like tried all sorts of different kinds of science, like microplastics and coastal chemistry, like water chemistry stuff and all of this. And I just kept coming back to sharks. Like nothing was as exciting as sharks to me. So I just really stuck with that. So I've been studying sharks now for, I don't know, 8, 9 years, something. I don't feel like counting right now, but something like that.
Awesome. And Dr. Sora, can you tell us how you got into shark research?
Yeah, I'm actually a geologist by training. Like my undergrad and graduate degrees are all from geology departments. And so I was really interested in the method of stable isotope analysis. And then when I went to grad school, I think I was telling Carly and Jasmine this past weekend when we met up for the MISS workshop, but my first year project was doing groundwater, surface water nitrates, agricultural nitrates with isotopes, which is not what I do at all now. But I was doing field work in these agricultural like streams and stuff like that. And my friends were doing research in really cool, amazing places like the Himalayas and Peru and I don't know, all sorts of cool places. And I was like, I need to get me like a charismatic megafauna that I can like analyze as well. Because I was in a lab that we used like fossil like horses and seals and whales and things like that. So I had this idea to apply this method of stable isotope analysis to sharks. And at that time, people weren't really using the method even on modern sharks, much less fossil sharks. And so I was like, oh, well, I'll do this captive feeding study and like, get that out of the way in 6 months and then I'll keep trucking and doing my paleontology thing. But it turns out like, I mean, as a geologist, I did not appreciate the metabolism of sharks as ectotherms. And so that I was raising sharks in very cold water from the Monterey Bay meant that my sharks grew very slowly. And so over the course of my 4-year PhD experiment, I fell in love with sharks. And now I like everything is shark themed in my life, it seems.
Yes, I love it. And April, can you tell us how you got into shark research?
Sure. So I've kind of been obsessed with the water and all the creatures from a young age. I grew up in Southern California, swimming, surfing, boogie boarding, angling, swimming, diving, everything in the water. And undergrad, I really concentrated more on chemistry and physics and water quality, and really just got obsessed with the water chemistry and how that affected climate. And then I've been obsessed. I've always loved sharks and just the big animals, and being a surfer my whole life, people sit there and always ask surfers that aren't surfers, aren't you afraid of sharks? So for the past decade, I've been really focused only on sharks because there is a huge opportunity, environmentally speaking, for surfers to become much more involved in conservation of sharks and the oceans. So that's something that I started more in the chemistry and math focused as far as population dynamics. And then now I've moved more into talking about how to educate people and live with sharks. So I got into it through the math and chemistry of the ocean, which I absolutely love. And then from being here in Los Angeles area, there's kind of a lot of opportunity to be be called out to be on the news, etc. And that was a, pretty easy jump as far as getting on for live news, etc. I'd had friends that grew up here and they were reporters and or cameramen and or people I've worked with on a project. So I get called in a number of different ways, mostly by location. I'm not sure if I was in another location and not a surfer, if I'd have been called so much to be on television.
Awesome. And Jada, tell us how you got into shark research.
Yeah, so I was always very interested in animals. My entire family and I knew that I was going to be a scientist in one way or another, basically since birth. And my brothers and I used to like go wander and find different animals wherever we lived. And mind you, we've lived in landlocked states our entire lives until now when I moved to Massachusetts. But I was always afraid of sharks. And I think it's because I didn't know enough about them. I think that a huge thing with fear is that I think it stems from the unknown, what we don't understand. And so I was really curious about them and I was afraid of them. And so I, decided to learn more about them, watching different shows and documentaries about not just sharks, but the ocean as well. And the more I learned, the more I was like, dude, these things are so cool and also in so much danger. They need a lot of help. I should help them. I love the water. Why don't I help them? Um, and so I just, in high school was like, that's it. I'm going to be a shark scientist. And everyone was like, you should have a backup plan. Like that seems like a really competitive field. And I was like, in my head, I was like, oh, so you don't believe in me? Cool. Well, now I'm gonna be a shark scientist even harder now. And so I just was too stubborn to give up or to pick a plan B. And I just had my sights set on shark scientist. And, I didn't do a ton of undergrad research, but I did a little bit. And it was just on, fish burial kinematics. And then after that, I was able to go do an internship at Friday Harbor Labs with the University of Washington to work on skate egg cases. And that manuscript has come out. I'm a second author. If you're interested, let me know. And that was like my first experience with research with elasmobranchs, and everyone knew that I was interested in working with sharks. And so everyone was like, yeah, let's help this girl find a place to work with sharks. And, I ended up meeting my now advisor through a friend of a friend of a friend, and you know how it goes. And now here I am, a shark scientist. And I've always loved science communication as well. Well, I've really admired science communication. I didn't really think about doing it until the pandemic hit, and I was like, I'm bored. I'm going to communicate science. And that's how it all started. And so now I get to kind of merge those two loves together of science and research and science communication. And I've been able to share my science on television and through different platforms with all of you. And it's been absolutely wonderful. So that's been my chaotic journey. Chaos is how I live, so I really wouldn't want it any other way.
We love a little chaos. And Abel, can you tell us how you got into shark research?
Yeah, I didn't really know what I wanted to be when I grew up. When I was a child, my mom was always like, "You'll be a teacher one day," and I was like, "All right, cool." But I actually wanted to go into something a little more creative, like fine arts, like video production, stuff like that in high school. So I was really on the fence about like what to pursue. And then we had to do this stupid English project that was like, write about what you want to be when you grow up. And I was like, ugh, whatever. And like we had to do an interview and we had to like go to the place of employment. And I was like, whatever. It's easier to go to an aquarium than it is to go to like an animation studio in the Bay Area. So I guess I'll just pretend I want to be a marine biologist for this project. And then I did an interview with a shark scientist, Dr. John McCosker at the California Academy of Sciences. And when I started talking with him, I was like really nervous, whatever. But once he started telling me all these stories of his travel and how he connected with people and like how like sharks needed our help and things like that, I was like, oh, maybe I don't want to pretend to be just a shark scientist for this project. Maybe I want to pretend to be a shark scientist in college, or maybe stop pretending and actually pursue this as a real career. So I ended up going to University of San Diego for my bachelor's to do marine science. And it just so happened that there was a new faculty there, and he was really enthusiastic about getting students to do undergraduate research. So that's how I started working with Andy Nosel here at USD/Scripps. And then I stayed on for a couple more years to do my master's. So happy little accident, if you will.
We love happy accidents, yes. So the next question I'm going to steer to Jasmine. So our next question asks if Nat Geo reached out to Miss for casting. Did you pitch to them, or did they reach out to the individual university PR department? So yeah, so Jasmine, could you talk about our partnership with Nat Geo, and then maybe if we have time, you guys can you all can tell us how if Nat Geo contacted you or not.
All right, so just real quick, because we're running out of time. So I did an article for Reality Blurred that was talking about shark documentaries and how there's a lack of representation in shark documentaries, and then through this, they have to ask the people to comment. So they reached out to National Geographic for them to comment. They reached out to Discovery for them to comment. Discovery didn't comment, but National Geographic did. And Janet, who's one of the top producers of Sharkfest, she said in the comment, her comment was, "Yeah, they're right. We have an issue with representation, and now I know Miss exists, so I'm going to go reach out to them." And not only did she say that, but she followed through. So double check. And so she emailed us at Miss and said, "Hello. So you may have seen the Reality Blurred article that I mentioned that I was going to contact you. This is me contacting you." And I was like, first of all, love that energy, Janet. And so we ended up meeting with her, and we started talking about things about how we can address this issue of lack of representation. And so we formed this partnership, this collaboration to try and get more diversity on screen, because that's something Janet's really passionate about, having diversity in front of camera as well as behind camera. So I was really excited to get to work with them. And anytime that they had a shark show, like, we need an expert on this, like, have I got a list of members for you that do this thing? So that's kind of how that worked out. So yes. Cool. So we have time for everyone to answer this next question in 30 seconds or less. Is everybody ready? What advice would you give to undergrads trying to break into shark science? And let's start with Carly. 30 seconds.
Yes, I would say that you need to network and you need to try and get experience in undergrad. I think undergrad's like one of the best times to get experience, because you can just pop in people's labs and be like, "Do you need help? I'll do some help for you." So don't be afraid to go talk to professors.
Awesome. Abel.
Join Miss. If you can't join Miss, become a friend of Miss. Also, yeah, focus on the research topic or question that you're interested first, and then focus on species later.
Jada.
My go-to message is always, don't let people tell you that you don't belong here. Science and the world in general has been historically very white male dominated. If you aren't a white male, I mean, even if you are a white man, don't just be an awesome person. Go into science. Science needs everyone to succeed, and don't let people tell you that you don't belong there. Be your own hype man and find a hype team to help support you, and keep being amazing. I believe in you. You should believe in yourself.
Awesome. Sora.
Also, undergrads should do research, but I think number 2 is it's important to find what kind of research you don't like to do as well. So maybe that first job isn't going to be what you do forever. Then 3 is to be nice to people, because you never know when life will come full circle and that you might need that person.
April.
I would say everything all of you just said, and additionally, really find your niche. I get called every time they need a researcher who surfs. That is my niche, especially here in Southern California. They talk about sharks and surfing, I get the call. So find your niche, get really good at it and understand it, but make sure you like it. And also, the secret is, I don't, but there are scientists in Southern California that do have agents. And so that is another way to get on TV if that's something you're really interested in.
And then my advice is that enjoy the journey. Everyone's path is windy. You're never doing anything wrong. you're just doing something. And if you change direction, that's not giving up. It's not quitting. It means that this is a different path, and it's never too late to jump off of a path and jump onto another one. It's all about the journey. No one's path is straight. So thank you everyone for joining us. I'm really excited to have this opportunity to talk to all of you. Thanks again for National Geographic for working to get more diversity on screen. For those of you that are interested in checking out these shows, they are streaming on Disney Plus, also any platform, channel, whatever that you watch National Geographic on. Shameless plug. Donate to support Miss. If you think that we're cool and we're doing cool things, feel free to drop us some dollars. If you don't have any dollars to drop, that's fine. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and now we have TikTok. So feel free to share our message. We love sharks. We love the planet. We want to make sure that it's a nice, habitable place for all of us. So that's what we're passionate about. In order to do that, you have to have diversity in scientists, diversity in thought. That's how we get that great innovation. So thanks for tuning in, everyone. If anyone has any comments, feel free to drop them in. We'll look at them later. And thank you all. And I hope that you all have a jawsome rest of your day. Bye, everyone.
Bye all.
Bye.